Shalom, everyone. Thank you for hosting us, Pastor John and Renee and Jill. It's a great honor to be here finally. Usually I watch from the other side of the world on Facebook, and actually now I'm here on the other side, so that's cool. Thank you. When I came in earlier today, Pastor John said, Aaron, you don't have to suit up. You can just wear casual clothes. And you have to understand, we've been here for a month already, and I wear this suit all the time so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be casual finally. And then I asked, is it going to be streamed live? He said yes, and I'm like, so there you go. So yeah, we've been here for a month, and my son Eviatar, my right hand, I think this after a month, it's time for me to actually stand on the podium and say thank you for your help. I would be really sad if I didn't have you with me during this month, and I really appreciate it. So looking forward for the next 20 days, and looking forward to going back home. Okay. So yeah, we had an amazing trip here in Israel, in the States, and we're going to continue doing that. We've been to Christian churches, Christian conferences, Orthodox synagogues, and I shared with all these audiences something that, with no humility at all, I'm not humble when I'm going to say this, I know, but one day when my grandchildren are going to go into the Israel Museum, they're going to show their children and their grandchildren a window, and just behind that window is a small lead tablet. And they're going to point at it and say, your grandfather found that. I made history, and I'm not kidding. I'm not even an archaeologist. I mean, and then they're going to come back home, see me, and we're going to play together. So, I'll start with a personal testimony of mine. And I don't have a lot of time, so I'll do this fast. I was born and raised in Jerusalem, Israel. My father is from America. He immigrated to Israel because of the 6-Day War. You all know that Israel had this amazing. We lived from a miracle to a miracle, but the 6-Day War was definitely one of those, the top 10. Suddenly Israel liberated Judea, Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel, the Golan Heights, the Sinai. We united Jerusalem, the capital of Israel. And so the Jews all over the world were so enthusiastic, and my father said to his parents, I'm going to Israel, and he immigrated. My mom came from Cairo, Egypt, a Sephardic Jew, a Middle Eastern Jew, and they met in Jerusalem. Here I am. And we were born and raised in Jerusalem, as I said, and the family was a traditional family, which means we believed in God. We believed in the Bible. This was part of our life. And I remember one of my childhood experiences is going to my grandfather's house in Bat Yam. This is the Egyptian grandfather, the father of my mom. And we would sit down in the living room and talk about Israel and about politics and about Israelis all the time talk about politics. And suddenly my grandfather would go with his hands like this and look at the ceiling. This is in the living room. He looks at the ceiling. And everybody quiets down. And then he starts praying to God in Arabic. And he's saying to God, God, please guide the state of Israel, guide our prime ministers, and keep our soldiers. And this is all in Arabic. And I'm watching this. I'm 6 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old. And I'm learning. I'm learning that God is everywhere. God is in the living room of my grandfather. And I can speak to him in any language I want, in Arabic, in Hebrew, any language. And I did. I remember taking that home and talking to God all my life, all the time. And I still do that. And so that was definitely one of those shaping experiences that I had. I also remember celebrating Passover, celebrating the feasts with my family, and commemorating the Exodus at the Passover meal, the Passover Seder. This is one of the highlights of the year. And when I was on third grade, I think, my parents bought me a This is a new clicker, so. Okay. It's not working. 1 second. Let's do this manually. There we go. You see this? Yeah. Okay. So my parents bought me a series of books, biblical books for children, and they're illustrated. You see the animated figures, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, and behind them is the real background of the places that are spoken about in the Bible. And I remember reading this through my childhood, and you know, when Samuel was hearing God's name, God's voice from the tabernacle, I was there with Samuel hearing that, and when Ezekiel saw the angelic revelations, I was with him and I was seeing that. For me, that was a real thing. I really believed in every word and every story that was in those series of books. So when I got to elementary school, we have in our public schools Bible classes. It's Israel, you know. So I'm sitting there, and my teacher says, you know, we were going to learn about Abraham today, and I'm like, I know this. And I aced elementary school in Bible. I was the best student in class, and the teacher had to shush me all the time, but what can you do when you have a maverick, when you have someone who's so you know, I'm doing this, and I love Bible, and then next is high school. We have Bible class in high school as well. That's good, right? You sure? Okay. So this is the entrance to my secular high school in Jerusalem. And I remember going into my first Bible class in high school, and my teacher is standing there and she's saying, we're going to start learning Genesis. And I'm like, I know this. And then she's standing there and she's saying, the book of Genesis, the creation, the chapters of creation, are a collection of mythologies from the Assyrian and Babylonian cultures, civilizations, which the Israelites took from them and manipulated to fit monotheism. Oh, and this goes on and on. The rest of the Torah is actually written by different scribes in different periods of time, some of them hundreds and hundreds of years after Moses and Joshua. And I'm sitting there as a kid, as a Jewish kid who believes in God, who believes in the historicity of the Bible, who believes that the 5 books were given to Moses on Mount Sinai, and I'm hearing my Bible teacher, my Jewish Bible teacher, in my school, in Jerusalem, in the land of Israel, and I'm being taught that my faith and my heritage is a hoax. It's a big lie. Later on, I joined the Israeli army, finished high school, joined the Israeli army because I spoke Arabic, because of my mother's side. I was immediately drafted to the intelligence corps, and that was an amazing 3-year service. I monitored Arab broadcasts. I can't tell you more than that because I'll have to kill you. But it was really an amazing army service. But I say the cherry on the ice topping was meeting my wife, Etty, who was a soldieress in my army base in another department. She saw this handsome and intelligent soldier, and she immediately, you just can't stand, just by. And so she started talking to me, and next thing I know, we're dating, and she's proposing. I kid you not. And I said, okay. And so we got married, and then next after army is university. So in Israel, we start university at the age of 21. So I started university, went to learn international politics and Jewish thought. And at the time, I was working at a lawyer's office. And at the lawyer's office, there was another student that was also working there, this red-headed girl. And she came to me one day, and she said, Aaron, I see you have a kippah on your head. So I assume you're religious and you believe in God. I'm learning archaeology in the Hebrew University. And I want to tell you that what we're learning there is that the Exodus never happened. And Moses and Joshua, they never existed. There's actually no evidence, no proof of them existing at all. So I'm sorry to tell you that, but bye-bye. So I'm standing there, and I'm starting to understand that what's going on in the academic world and the educational system is really wrong. And the problem is that it's not just in Israel, in Jerusalem, or in universities in Israel. It's all over the world. When we send our kids who were brought up in families that were believing families, that were talking to God, were praying to God, and we're sending them to the colleges, we're sending them to the others, we're sending them to the people that are going to teach them that God doesn't exist, that the Bible never happened. And when we're looking at the Pew researches that are going on in the States, and we see what the situation of religiosity is in the United States and other places in Europe and all over the world, now we understand why our children are brainwashed in universities not to believe in God and in the Bible. One day I walk in Jerusalem, and I see an ad, professor of archaeology. This is the advertisement. Professor of archaeology from the Haifa University, Adam Zertal, is going to speak about his discovery of Joshua's altar. I'm looking at this. This is probably 2006 or 2007, and it looks weird because I see professor of archaeology, and I see his discovery of Joshua's altar. It's not no glue there. So I said, I need to go. I need to see this. And went to his lecture. This is in Jerusalem. And Professor Zertal gave an hour-and-a-half long lecture about the discovery of Joshua's altar. And I have to tell you, I fell in love, first of all, with the personality. A person that was with a smile on his face and had integrity. He was a real person. He was willing to admit that he was wrong. He was willing to admit that the academic world was wrong. Really a person with integrity. And I remember since then I was basically involved with speaking to him, inviting him to speak to our Christian groups that visited Israel. And now I'm even part of his team. Although I'm not an archaeologist, I help them with photography, but we'll speak about that in a few minutes. So before we dive in, let's talk about what is Joshua's altar. Okay, we've all read the Bible multiple times, and the problem is when you read the Bible constantly, you kind of brush through, and you don't really stop for a second and look deeply. Or if there are a couple of mentions of a certain event, we don't really look only at them. We always just go and look at everything. And so what I want to do in the next few minutes is concentrate on what is Joshua's altar, what is this ceremony that we're talking about. I'm not going to read through the whole verses. You're more than invited to do that at home or read now what's behind in the screen. I'm just going to point out the important things. So, in the book of Deuteronomy, Moses commands the Israelites twice to do a ceremony. Once in Deuteronomy 11 and once in Deuteronomy 27. And what Moses tells the Israelites is, there are two mountains in the biblical heartland of Israel that are called Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. You are to proclaim the blessings and the curses on each mountain. Mount Gerizim is the mountain of blessing, and Mount of curses is Mount Ebal. And then there's going to be an altar that's going to be built on the mountain of curses, Mount Ebal. Okay, and there's a whole description of how this altar should be built and what should be done with that altar. And then we're going to have a ceremony with all the Israelites attending. They're going to be saying amen to blessings and curses. And so this is the commandment of Moses. Then we have in the book of Joshua the implementation. Joshua says to the Israelites, I've done what Moses told me. I built an altar on Mount Ebal. Everybody was there. We said amen. And that's it. So we have 3 mentions of this ceremony, which is quite unique, I have to say, in the Bible, that there's such a repetition of a certain single event that is described. So let's look first at Deuteronomy 11. So we have the commandment of Moses, and we actually have a clear description of where they are. This is a GPS, biblical pinpoint location, and we have at the end the great trees of Moreh, which for the Israelites and also for us is a clear indication that this should be done in the area of the city of Shechem. Okay, so this is Deuteronomy 11. Deuteronomy 27, we have a commandment. This is another chapter. We have a commandment to build a memorial on Mount Eval. What we see here, what I want to emphasize is that we have plaster, we have writing, and the stones are being set on Mount Eval. The next commandment in chapter 27 is building an altar. The altar has to be of uncut stones, field stones. There's going to be burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. In other words, offerings that are burnt in full to the Lord versus offerings that are going to be some of it burnt to the Lord and some eaten by the people who sacrifice them. And we have writing. Again, notice this is repeating itself. We have writing. Deuteronomy 27 is the description of the ceremony of the blessings and the curses. We have half the tribes on one mountain, half of the tribes on the other. We have the Levites in the middle, and the Levites are screaming, they're calling these 12 curses. They're calling these 12 curses, and every curse the Israelites say amen to. Okay? I'm just going to read the first two. Cursed is anyone who makes an idol, a thing detestable to the Lord, the work of skilled hands, and sets it up in secret. Then all the people shall say, Amen. What does this remind you? 10 Commandments. Very good. Let's read the second one. Cursed is anyone who dishonors their father or their mother. Again, 10 Commandments. Okay, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because Jewish sages are talking about this ceremony as being equivalent to Mount Sinai. Okay? They even say that it's more important than Mount Sinai because in Mount Sinai, the Israelites didn't have a choice. They were standing there was all this fireworks, fire, noise, shofar. They didn't have a choice. They had to say yes. Here, this ceremony, they are receiving the kingdom of God and His commandments willingly in the land of Israel. So this is the importance of the ceremony. I'm not going to go through the whole list. It ends with, cursed is anyone who does not uphold the words of this law by carrying them out. Then all the people shall say amen. So let's just summarize. We have 12 curses. By the way, in Hebrew, the word curse is arul, okay? And it's in the singular. So every Israelite saying amen is actually cursing himself if he's not going to follow God's commandments. This is a self-imprecatory curse. And we have 12 curses versus 10 commandments. Why 12? Maybe 12 tribes. Well, we don't know. But this is what we have. So we have the commandment of Joshua, the commandment of Moses. Moses passes away. Joshua goes into the land with the Israelites, and he's doing the ceremony. Okay, so again, let's look at the important words. We have an altar built on Mount Eval. The altar is of uncut stones. We're going to have fellowship offerings and burnt offerings. We're going to have writing, where the Ark of the Covenant is there. This is how important this ceremony is. And most importantly, we're going to have both the foreigners living among them and the native born were there. But that's not everyone. We even have the women and the children, just like Mount Sinai. Okay, this is the second and last time that the whole Israelite nation is convening in one place. From this point on, they're dispersing to conquer the whole land and settle. And so you understand how important this is. I want to mention another verse in the Bible. The commandment of Moses is to build an altar of stone. How do you build an altar of stone? Well, in the book of Exodus, it says, "If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it with dressed stones, for you will defile it if you use a tool on it. And do not go up to my altar on steps, or your private parts may be exposed." So we have two conditions in the Bible to build a stone altar. One is uncut stones. Why? If you cut the stone with an iron tool, iron is a weapon of war, bloodshed. The altar of God is an altar of peace. You will defile it. And so it has to be natural stones that are building this monument. The second condition is not to have steps going up to the higher ground, the bama, but to have something else. This is what we have. So, did the ceremony really happen? Did the ceremony happen? Yes. Historians acknowledge that after more than 2 centuries of archaeological research, there is still an absence of evidence for the presence of Israel in Egypt. Okay? I'm celebrating with my grandfather Passover Seder. Didn't happen. Okay? Judaism and Christianity are based on a lie. Okay? This is what they're saying. But I want to focus on one thing. There's an absence of evidence. In other words, we, archaeologists and historians, went into the temples in Egypt, and we looked everywhere. And none of the pharaohs say anything about them losing to the Israelites. Weird, huh? 10 plagues never happened because they didn't write it. They didn't write anything about the parting of the Red Sea, right? And the death of all the Egyptian soldiers. It's not written anywhere, so there's an absence of evidence. You understand? It is hard to accept, but scholars today are convinced that Israel was not present in Egypt, nor wandered in Sinai. They did not conquer Canaan, nor inherited it to the 12 tribes, and the Israelite religion did not adopt monotheism on Mount Sinai, but at the end of the monarchical period. So, everything from Exodus, Sinai, Torah, wandering in the desert, Joshua, conquest, all of that never happened. Okay? And you want to hear another thing? The Egyptians write on walls in the temples, right? The Assyrians and Babylonians, they write on cuneiform tablets. They know how to write. But we didn't find any Israelite writing from the late Bronze Age and the early Iron Age. We just didn't find anything. So how could it be that the Israelites wrote on the altar? They received a Bible on Mount Sinai, a Torah. We didn't find, there's an absence of evidence. So the Israelites were illiterate. Okay, they could not have received any written document on Mount Sinai, let alone passed it on to the next generations. It was all made up in the year 800 or 600 or 700 BCE, 1,000 years after the Exodus in Mount Sinai. It was all made up. Okay, we just didn't find any evidence of Israelite writing. By the way, what do we write on? Parchments. The parchments, do they stay for a long time? They don't. But it doesn't matter. There's an absence of evidence. You understand? I'm stopping here for a second, and I want to tell you that why are they saying that? Why are these professors, why are they saying that? They're saying that for 2 reasons. One, they have a clear agenda against God in the Bible. Okay? I want to give a Nobel Prize for the person who invented the word objective. Really. Because you can say I'm objective, and then you can do whatever you want. Right? And so you understand that these guys here are religious. They are atheists. It's a religion. It's a religion that says that God doesn't exist, that the Torah, the Bible is not true, that God is an imaginary friend. It's a whole religion with laws and command. And I'm telling you, Okay, so this is one reason. The second reason is the absence of evidence. Okay, we read stories in the Bible, so we're going to the land of Israel and we're looking for evidence for these events, but we can't find them, so they never happened. You understand? So what if it happened 3,000 years ago and you know it's a long time and things get ruined and you don't find them? You didn't find it, it didn't happen. One of the reasons why they didn't find it is because the stories are happening in a certain area in the land of Israel, the biblical heartland of Israel, Judea and Samaria. You might have heard of it as the West Bank. That's also used. The biblical heartland of Israel is where all the biblical stories happen. Hebron, Bethel, Jerusalem, Shiloh, Mount Gerizim, Mount Ebal, all of these important biblical places are in a certain area that was supposed to be part of the state of Israel. 1948, Israel declares independence. 8 Arab armies attack us. Guess who wins? God. But there's one Arab army that is victorious. The Jordanian army invades from the East Bank to the West Bank, occupies Judea, Samaria, and East Jerusalem, and controls those areas for 19 years. In other words, Israeli archaeologists could not survey, they could not research the biblical heartland of Israel, all these places where all these stories happened, and so they can't find evidence, right? I mean, if they can't research it, they can't find evidence. 1967, great miracle. My parents come to Israel, but also we liberate the biblical heartland of Israel. And archaeologists in Israel are so excited because for the first time they are able to go in there freely and research. So Judea and Samaria are immediately cut between different groups of archaeologists. There's an emergency survey. We don't have time. We don't know what's going to happen with these areas. Maybe we'll return them to Jordan. Maybe there'll be a Palestinian state. We don't know what we're going to do, so we have to do an emergency survey. And Professor Adam Zertal, a young atheist professor from a kibbutz in Israel, and his crew receive a certain area that is basically the Jordan Valley, north of the Dead Sea, up to the area of Beit She'an, and the whole area of the tribe of Manasseh. And that's why the team is called the Manasseh Hill Country Survey Team. Okay? I told them that they have to make it shorter. But anyway, so it's the Manasseh Hill Country Survey Team. And what they're doing basically, this is a crash course in archaeology. There are 2 stages to the archaeological work. One is the survey. What you do is you walk with 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, and you're looking at the ground and you're looking for any ancient remains. It could be walls, it could be pottery sherds, anything. And when you get to a place like that, you take the pottery sherds and you're looking at them and you're saying, this is Roman pottery. Okay, so you open the map and you write, I found 5 pieces of Roman pottery. And you continue on. You get to another site. You pick up the pottery sherds. This is Persian. You write on the map. And you continue on. And what you basically do is you create a whole picture of the ancient human activity in a certain area. Ladies and gentlemen, that was never done in Judea and Samaria. Never. And Professor Zertal and his crew find thousands of newly discovered archaeological sites that were not known to anyone from different periods, okay? But we're interested in a certain period. Okay, so this is the first part of the archaeological work. The second is the excavation. And what you do is, an archaeologist says, I'm interested in the Persian period. He opens the map of the survey, looks for Persian sites, and then he goes there with a crew and he excavates from up all the way down to the bedrock. That's the second stage, the excavation. Okay, very simple. You're all archaeologists now. So, Adam Zertal and his crew are walking in the Jordan Valley, they're walking in Samaria, they're finding these new sites. I'm just going to browse through the three most important discoveries in my view. The first one is an interesting phenomenon that we have to explain. Adam Zertal is walking in the Jordan Valley, and he sees that at the late Bronze Age, okay, when I say late Bronze Age, it means nothing to you. The late Bronze Age is the year 1500 to roughly 13 or 1200 BCE. The Jordan Valley is empty. Nobody's living there. Okay, it's an arid desert, it's hot, lots of flies, it's really hard. But then, when you look at the early Iron Age period, suddenly hundreds of sites appear from nowhere. They didn't come from the west, they just appeared suddenly in the Jordan Valley. These are semi-nomadic sheep pens, circular ones, that had tents around them, okay? Something happened around the year 1400, 1300 BCE. Some culture, a semi-nomadic culture, apparently invaded from the east and settled in the Jordan Valley. I wonder who they are. The next thing that they find is that the same culture is building these weird-looking footprint structures. Okay, this is huge. This is 2 football field size, huge footprint structures. And Zertal, has a whole theory about them. This is another topic. Pastor John, you'll have to invite me again. I'm sorry. But why are they in the shape of a foot? Why are they located where they're located? Why do they have natural slopes adjacent to them? These are all questions that we will leave in the air. I'll just say to you, tomorrow night, that Adam Zertal believed that these are the ancient worshiping sites of the Israelites. Okay? But that's it for now. I'm just going to concentrate on one of those footprint structures, the one on Mount Eval. Okay, so Adam Zertal and his crew are walking in Samaria. Adam Zertal is not looking for an altar, okay, because it didn't exist, right? Joshua didn't exist, the altar didn't exist. He's walking on Mount Eval on the northeastern slopes of this mountain, remote place. Nobody ever lived there. You really don't have anything to look there. And he's walking, and suddenly he sees this weird footprint enclosure. And he already found a few earlier, so he suddenly said, what's going on here? He's going inside the footprint structure, and what he sees is, now you see me, now you don't. One second. Aviatar, where is it? There it is, found it. He sees thousands of pottery sherds. And he dates these pottery sherds to the late Bronze and early Iron Age period. Okay? I have to stop for a second. I'm holding pottery sherds that my forefathers made 3,500 years ago. Okay? These are rims of colored rim jars which are clearly identifiable with the Israelite culture. Okay? So I'm going to give this to you, pass it on, but you're touching your heritage as well.
That's very cool, thank you.
So Adam Zertal is walking inside this footprint structure, and the more he goes in, the more of these fragments he finds all over the place. And he walks in and he continues walking in. Before I show you the next video, I have to tell you a personal story. This is serious. When I married my wife, who is Yemenite, there's one thing I didn't know, and that is that Yemenite Jews do not celebrate birthdays. And the first year went on, the second year, the third year, and nobody's celebrating my birthday. and I'm not getting a present. Suddenly, when I reach the age of 40, I'm desperate. We're at my mother-in-law's house. Wrong place, by the way. And I stand in front of my wife and I say, Etty, I'm 40 years old. It's time for a birthday present. And then I see my mother-in-law turning, she's washing the dishes. She's turning around and she looks at me and she says, Aaron, you know who celebrated their birthday in the Bible? I said, who? She said, Pharaoh. Okay, when Pharaoh had those dreams that he told Joseph, that was on his birthday. You want to be evil like Pharaoh? I said yes. If that's what I need to do to get a present. So my wife says, what do you want? She said, I told her I want a drone. Just a drone. But she said, well, how much does this drone cost? And I said, it's $1,500. And she said, not a dime. So I said, can I crowdfund for it? She said, yeah, do whatever you want. You won't succeed. And I did. So I got my first drone when I was 40. Today, the Lipkin fleet has 3 drones. And I told my wife, I told her, Etty, I'm doing this solely for scientific research. So I'm going to show you some of my scientific research, because the rest I won't show you. And so I'm going to show you a flyover the footprint structure on Mount Eival. And you can actually see one of our groups standing here. And so you understand how huge, how big this thing is. So Adam Zertal is walking in. Let's imagine where Adam Zertal is walking in. This is 1980. And he sees that this compound that he's going in actually is divided. Okay, let's look at this archaeological sketch. We have the outer temenos, the outer wall, and we have inside another wall with stairs leading from one area to the other. And at the highest point of that compound is a pile of stone. Who here was in Israel? Okay, lots of people. There's a lot of stones in Israel, right? All over. So, we're looking at this and, big deal. But this is a pile of stone inside a compound with lots of late Bronze, early Iron Age. By the way, you can't say Israelite pottery in the archaeological world, because if you do that, you're biased. Okay, this is early Iron Age. You can say Persian pottery, you can say Philistine pottery, you can say Canaanite pottery, you can say, but Israelite pottery, your academic career is gone. Anyway, so he's walking to this pile of stone with Israelite pottery, and he says, I have to come back here. This is important. I need to excavate. 1982, he comes with a crew till 1989, couple of seasons, and they're excavating this pile of stone. And what they first do is they peel off the outer layer of this pile of stone. Let's call it layer number 1. Okay? And under this layer of stone pops out a structure. The structure is made out of field stones. And it's basically a rectangular box of stones. And there's a ramp leading up to it with 2 secondary ramps on both sides. This is another diagram of how it looks like. And Adam Zertal is really intrigued. Now, Adam Zertal does what every archaeologist does. He finds a structure and he needs to look for a parallel. We need to identify who built this. And so he goes to libraries. He looks at the Egyptian culture. He looks at the Babylonian culture, the Assyrian look, the Phoenician. There's one he's not looking at, by the way. But he's looking everywhere. And he can't find any structure that looks like this. He continues the excavation, and what he does is he opens the floor that seals this box that you see here, and he finds lots and lots of ashes and bones, 2 meters of them. This is weird, okay? And by the way, this is not a house or a room because there's no entrance to this box. It's just a box of stone filled with bones and ashes. They send the bones to Jerusalem, to the university. Results come in. All the animals are, surprise, surprise, kosher animals. Goats, sheep, oxes, cows, deers. But what they don't find is more interesting. No pig bones, no donkey bones, no horse bones. This is a clear sign of a site being Israelite. Okay? Adam Zertal continues digging all the way down to the bedrock, right? This is the excavation, all the way down to the bedrock. And smack in the center of that box, he finds a circular structure of some sort. Let's stop for a second. The chronology, the history of this structure is as follows. Someone came here 3,400 years ago. They built this circular thingy, and then they built the bigger structure, putting that structure at the center of the box filled with bones and ashes. Okay? And then, at the end, they covered it with stone. Okay? Which actually helped us a lot because it preserved the structure intact. What else did they find? They found Egyptian jewelry. They found scarabs and a stone dice. They found a pumice chalice, which is used for incense sacrificial activities. And they found... Weird. What's going on here? Anyway, so Adam Zertal is sitting in the dining room of Shavei Shomron, and he's sketching this weird structure. By the way, that's my drone footage, I'm just saying. So he's sketching this structure, and he's really frustrated. Suddenly, this religious Jew comes behind him. His name is Tzvi Konigsberg, by the way, and he's coming and he sees this and he says, "Professor, is this the structure you found on Mount Ebal?" And Professor Zertal looks at him and says, "Yes, I don't know what it is. I looked everywhere. Egypt, Syria, Babylon, Lebanon, everything. Couldn't find anything that looks like this." And then he sees this Jew, this religious Jew, all excited, and he runs away. And he sees the dust, you know. And then this Jew comes back, the religious Jew, and he has a book in his hand. This is a book called the Mishnah, which was written after the Second Temple period. He's opening this book, and he's showing Adam Zertal a picture of the altar at the Second Temple period. Okay, this is, by the way, this altar at the Second Temple period was 1,400 years after the story of Joshua. Okay, just keep that in mind. Adam Zertal is looking at this, and he can't believe his eyes. He sees a structure that has a box, a rectangular box, with a ramp going up to it, with the secondary ramps on both sides, and it's an altar. So there has to be inside the altar or on the altar bones and ashes. At that point in Adam Zertal's life, he saw all these huge buildings of education in his mind collapse. He looks at Tzvi Konigsberg, this religious Jew, and he says, "Tzvi, this is an Israelite altar." He said the word Israelite. "This is an Israelite altar on Mount Ebal. This is what's described in Deuteronomy and in Joshua. This is Joshua's altar. And if this is Joshua's altar, then Joshua existed, and Moses existed, and the Exodus happened." And the religious Jew looks at him and says, "Of course. Where were you? What's going on?" I want to concentrate on this for a second, okay? Why was Adam Zertal so overwhelmed? Because we have a structure that is commanded in Deuteronomy, which is part of the 5 books of Moses, and we have a structure, the same structure, that is described in the book of Joshua, which is the early prophets. So there's this nail that is holding these 2 sticks together and proving them. You understand the ramifications of this? Adam Zertal hoped that the academic world would come and say, we were wrong. The Bible is true. But guess what? Didn't happen. There are too many books that were written, too many academic careers that were... So what do? You do cancel culture and you ignore. Okay? Because you have to understand, the ramifications are overwhelming. Or as Professor Steger said from Harvard University, if there is an altar on Mount Ebal, as Zertal claims, we biblical scholars should all go back to kindergarten. This is where I would finish my lecture. But in 2019, something amazing happened. And I'm going to share that with you. But first, let's do a brief overview of the years 1989 to 2019. It was excavated, and the excavations ended in 1989. Every excavation needs a final report. The final report on the discovery of the altar was never published. You know why? Because you need money. Okay? And where do archaeologists get money? By the way, archaeology is not a way to get rich, okay? Whatever. How do you get grants? Very good. How do you get grants? You go to the universities and the different funds and you say, I am excavating a site, a very important site that's connected to the Bible, that's connected to Joshua. And you know what? It's even in Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel. Give me money. You know what the answer is? No. Right. You're smart. Okay? There is a clear stance in the academic world against funding Israeli archaeologists that are excavating in Judea and Samaria. Israeli archaeologists are trembling. They're trembling. I went to Dr. Shai Bar, the disciple of Adam Zertal, who leads our team now, and I said, Shai, we have to do something with the altar. He said, Aaron, if I touch this altar with a 5-foot pole, my academic career is gone. Israel signs the Oslo Accords in the 1990s, and a certain archaeologist in the Israeli army makes sure that the border between Israel and the Palestinian Authority passes about 100 meters away from the altar, putting the altar under the Palestinian Authority. So Israeli archaeologists can't even excavate there now. And I go there on a weekly basis. I took Pastor John and Renee and Jill. I go there almost every week and I see how the altar is being vandalized by the Muslims. It's being graffitied. They burn tires inside. They sit on the altar and push the stones with their feet. And you know what? It's not the blame of the Muslims. It's the state of Israel that has deserted this important site. One day I say enough is enough. And I approach a Texan archaeologist. His name is Scott Stripling. Scott has excavated since the 1970s in Samaria. He's currently excavating in Shiloh. And I said to Scott, have you ever been to Joshua's altar? He said, no, I want to go. I said, let's go. Audio. Here with Dr. Scott Stripling.
Hello, everybody.
And just behind us is one of the most amazing archaeological structures that were discovered, Joshua's altar. Scott, What can you say about this?
Well, this is one of the most incredible sites in Israel. It ties in with the earliest Israelite heritage, and this rectangular altar was built by people who wanted to venerate what God had done in this place. Underneath it is a round altar that we're interested in exploring also. When people come to a place like this, they connect with their faith heritage, and when we...
I know you want to hear more, but... So Scott said, Aaron, I can't excavate here, just like Shai. But I have an idea. Adam Zertal did a great job, but there's one thing he didn't do. He didn't use water when he examined the rubble that he took out of the altar. Okay, this is called wet sifting. Okay, he dry sifted, he didn't wet sift. When you wet sift with water, you can actually differentiate between what's a stone and what is not. Listen to this. If you don't wet sift, you lose 75% of the findings. So Scott said, Aaron, you bring Adam Zertal's archaeological dump from this site to a safe location. And when you're done, I'll bring my staff and we'll go through it and wet sift. And I said, yeehaw. He's texting. So I'm taking my drone, okay? And I am videoing all the dumps that I find according to the reports of Zertal. So we have a western dump that you see here. Sorry, this is the eastern dump. This is the altar. So they excavated inside and they threw everything here. And there's another dump on the east. We go 3 times. I remember the first day we were there at 4 a.m. and we're praying to God. I'm putting my tefillin and my prayer shawl on, and I'm saying, God, give us something. Give us something big. These are Christian volunteers.
Hard here.
Bucket!
And they're filling buckets, and they're putting them in the truck, and we are taking everything to a township called Chavei Shomron. Scott and his crew, by the way, one of Scott's crew is right here with us. Say hi, Perry. And by the way, when he stands on the altar and he blows the shofar, that's... So Scott and his crew are there. They're establishing the wet sifting stations, and they're starting to go through the the material. One day I get a phone call. Scott is on the line. He says, Aaron, get over here. Go into my car. I drive, and I get there, and Scott opens his hand, and I see this weird, small, square thingy. I don't know what it is. I say, Scott, what is that? He said, I don't know. I've seen these cursed tablets in the Hellenistic period, the Persian period, but the weird thing is that Joshua's altar is a one-layer site. You only have one period in history when it was used, and then it was never used before. So, but it wasn't the dump that was taken out of that structure. So I don't know. It's not. I don't know if it's Hellenistic, if it's Persian. Let's send it to be examined. We send it to the university. They see a strip of metal, a lead metal that was folded. So they try to open it, see what's inside. It starts breaking. So they stop. We send it to the Academy of Sciences in Prague, in the Czech Republic. They have a CAT scan type of a technology called tomography. They scan from the inside and the outside, and this is the machine. And scans start coming in, and I start hearing weird stuff going on. Scott is telling me, Aaron, we're starting to identify text, and it's not Roman, it's not Persian, it's Hebrew. A few months ago, Scott says, Aaron, we're doing a press conference, we're ready. we're going to present the text. Ready? Now I have just the excerpts of the press conference, mainly the important stuff, the places where he commends me. But you're more than welcome to watch it on YouTube, okay?
First of all, I'd like to say a word about Aaron Lipkin. It was Aaron and I who originally dreamed or brainstormed this idea on the last day of the Shiloh excavation in 2019. And it was going to take someone on that end to logistically help pull things off, to relocate the dump material and just do so many logistical things. And so Aaron and I dreamed about this, and so it was that initial collaboration that was key to bringing this to fruition. So thank you, Aaron. Working on the inside of the tablet, we recovered 40 Hebrew letters, and this is in a script that we would call proto-alphabetic script. Sometimes if it's from the Sinai, it's referred to as Proto-Sinaitic, or sometimes folks would refer to this as Proto-Canaanite. We will call it Proto-Alphabetic script. 11 of these letters are alephs, the first letter in the Hebrew alphabet, and they are all the archaic form. This is older than Paleo-Hebrew. This predates Paleo-Hebrew. And so you have an ox head that is morphing into an aleph. And in the 23-word English translation, which you're looking at, the word curse, arur in Hebrew, appears 10 times. And ladies and gentlemen, the name Yahweh appears twice. We now have the name Yahweh, the biblical God of Israel, in an inscription dating from LB2, which is earlier than many skeptics would argue that the Bible existed or that there was even the ability to write down a sacred text. Okay, this is Stuart Peck from Appian Media. Yes, we did excavate through about 30% of the material, Stu, and we would love to excavate through more, and hopefully we will have generous donors that will enable us to do that. This is all, of course, a very expensive process, and we would love to do more work on Mount Ebal in the future. This was the test, if you will, to find out what was in the dump piles, and we, the day that Aaron Lipkin and I, last day we went to look at the site to inaugurate the project. As we pulled away and stopped and looked back, it had rained a little earlier, and there was a rainbow over the altar. And instead of a pot of gold, we found a pot of lead at the end of the rainbow. Okay, we have another.
You want to see the text? Okay, so I spoke to Professor Gershon Galil just 3 weeks ago when I was in Denver, and he gave me the updated text after the further analysis of it. And so there are minor changes. You are cursed by the God. We cannot say the name. The Jews cannot say the name. So we say Hashem. You are cursed by the God Hashem. Cursed. You will die cursed. Cursed you will surely die. Cursed you are by the Lord. Cursed. I'm telling you, in Hebrew, it's even scarier. Really. You want to see the text? Yeah. Okay. Before we do that, I need to I gave you a crash course in archaeology. You're archaeologists. Now I'm going to give you a crash course in ancient Hebrew. So, this is modern Hebrew. This is Second Temple Hebrew that modern Hebrew comes from. Okay? Between King David or King Solomon and the destruction of the first temple, the Israelites are using this line. It's called Phoenician, okay, or Paleo-Hebrew. King David and back all the way to the Exodus, okay, the Israelites are using Proto-Alphabetic, also called hieroglyphic Hebrew. This is the most ancient form of Hebrew script. Every letter has a picture, okay? It's kind of like the hieroglyphs, but hieroglyphs could be one sign saying a whole sentence. This is alphabetic. This is and so the letter Yud, for example, is a Yad, a hand. The letter Daled, D, is a Dag, a fish. Okay, this is... So, ready? Okay, we're going to see the name of the Lord. This is the letter Yud, this is the letter Hey, this is the letter Vav. By the way, if you noticed, it's from left to right. You guys were right all wrong. Just kidding. At that time, the direction wasn't standardized, so you could read it from right to left, from left to right, sometimes the same text from right to left and to left to right. I have to tell you, when I see this as a Jew, I'm shocked, because I'm so used to reading the Torah in the square script, the modern square script. Suddenly I realized that when Moses receives the Ten Commandments and the Torah, it looks like this. So for me, that's a big revolution. Anyway, we're running out of time, so I'm just going to browse through this. This text includes 48 letters inside, 46 letters outside, total of 94 letters. The ancient scribe had a piece of lead. He took a stylus. By the way, we found 3 styluses in the dump. He takes the stylus, he writes on the upper part, and it comes out, right? Because it's an indentation, it's an engraving. So we have a negative and a positive. Then he flips the lead tablet and he writes here the second text, the same text, by the way. And after that, so we have a plus and minus, and then he folds it. So total of 94 letters. The name of Hashem appears 4 times. The names Hashem and El appear together. Remember this, because I'm going to give you the summary of the repercussions. This is chiastic parallelism, okay? This is not just a curse of an Israelite woman on her husband. This is a complex text. It's written with a lot of thought. There's unvowelized and vowelized Hebrew spelling, and this is the most ancient version of Hebrew font. Initial conclusions. This is the Israelite religion, okay? The Lord, YHW, is not worshipped by the Canaanites. This is the first time that the name of the Lord appears in such an ancient period in the land of Israel. Israelite ethnicity. We have Hebrew and we have the name of the Lord. We clearly have a document that was written by the ancient Israelites. Guess what? Israelites were literate. They could have received the Torah on Mount Sinai and passed it on through the generations. There's a possible connection to the ceremony, the blessings and the curses. We found a curse tablet on the mountain of curse. Okay, possible. And the metal is from Greece, from quarries that were in action, that were operating in the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age, which means we also have that dating to reinforce our ancient dating. And last and not least, this is the altar and the footprint structures, which were built by the same civilization, are all Israelite. Okay? They're not a watchtower or a Canaanite barbecue stand. I didn't invent this, by the way. This is what the minimalist archaeologist said after Zertal found this, okay? It's clearly Israelite. Okay, now, what I gave you are the facts. What I'm going to give you now is my interpretation. And I'm not objective. So, what's the connection? Folded lead tablet is a sign for a legal document, according to Professor Gershon Galil. So folding it means it's an important document. It has 6 curse on one side and 6 curse on the other of the tablet. Reminds you of something? Yes. 6 tribes on one side, 6 tribes on the other. Total of 12 curses, arur, just like Deuteronomy 27. Too many coincidences. This is a high-skilled scribe, both craftsmanship and authorship, okay? There are 94 letters on this eeny-beeny tiny lead tablet. The curse in the tablet is in singular. The whole text is in singular, just like Deuteronomy 27. And it came from, apparently, it came from inside the altar, which means it's an important document. I'm going to browse fast to the end, unfortunately, but where can we find in the Bible engraving on metal? In Job, we can find, we see that engraving on metal is forever. We see in Zechariah that lead is a metal that is identified with curse. So that's the character that the Israelites attribute to lead. Okay? Not like the high priest that had the golden plate on his forehead that has holy to the Lord. Gold is apparently a good metal. I'm going to share an insight with you. that I just got this week, and maybe I'm wrong. Okay, maybe I'm just like this crazy Jew, but just like the other guy that ran with the dust. The most important part in our prayer is the Aaronic blessing at synagogue. Usually when you pray, people are on their phone, they're talking. Some pray, but some don't. And but when the Aaronic blessing is going on, everybody's quiet because you want to get blessed. And so what happens is the descendants of Aaron, the Kohanim, they go up to the front of the synagogue, they cover themselves with a prayer shawl, and they say a blessing. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has commanded us to bless his people Israel with love. And then they turn around to the congregation, and they're covered with the prayer shawl, and with their hands they go like this, and they say the Aaronic blessing on the congregation. I'm going to show you a short video from the Western Wall. The cantor will recite every word from the Aaronic blessing, and the priests are going to repeat it. I always wondered, why does the Kohanim, the priesthood, when they bless the congregation, they stand like this? Where does it come from? Where does it come from? I mean, we Jews, we have our traditions. We pray from the prayer book, and we have our meditation times and our singing times. But this thing that the priests are going up and they're doing this thing is spectacular. It's something that always stood up to me as being special. And I always thought to myself, this has to be from Mount Sinai, because there's no verse speaking about standing like this and holding your hands like this. But I think I have an answer. Moses says to the Israelites, you will put the blessing on Mount Gerizim and the curse on Mount Ebal. And we find a lead tablet with a curse, a physical curse that was put on Mount Ebal. Is it possible that the word to put is not just symbolic, that it's physical? We're also going to say the curses, but we're going to have a physical object that's going to symbolize the curse. And we have a commandment in the Torah that says, so they will put my name on the Israelites, and I will bless them. Is there a physical, active thing that you can do to put the name of the Lord on the congregation? So my theory is that the reason why they're standing like this is because they symbolize in their body the name of God. Because you have the letter Hey in the middle of a man standing, and you have two letters on both sides. There you go. My insight, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And let's finish. The most important question, in my view, is why is the altar of God built on the mountain of curse? If I was God, I would build it on the good mountain, right? The mountain of blessing. So I have an answer, I think. And it goes like this. The ceremony of the blessings and the curses is the message. The main message is we have a choice. We can choose between good and bad. God says, if you choose good, you'll be blessed. If you don't choose to go in my way, you'll be cursed. But you have the choice. This is the main message. So, what about the altar and Harival? I think that what God is saying is basically, if you're righteous, if you chose the blessings in Mount Gerizim, good for you. But if you're a sinner and you're cursed, and suddenly you want to come back to God, the altar of God is waiting for the sinner on the mountain of curse. The altar and the sacrifice is atonement. The message of the altar is repentance. Or as Ezekiel says, say to them, as surely as I live, declares the sovereign Lord, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live. Turn from your evil ways. Why will you die, people of Israel? Thank you.
Amen. So that's just a little thing to stimulate you. You guys can turn me on when you get a chance. But isn't that interesting how from the Hebrew Bible into the New Testament, God's consistent. Curses anyone who hangs on a tree. That he who knew no sin became sin for us, right? It's so the curse, so to speak, if you want to put it that way, was placed on Christ for us. So he's always consistent. I mean, and so, you know, what Aaron has taken you through tonight is one piece. I mean, it's the most exciting, for which this humble man can at least fantasize and believe that he'll be in the Israel Museum someday.
Not me.
Right next to the Shrine of the Book. Right next to the Shrine of the Book. But there's so much else. Look, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a 15-minute break. If you have children in children's ministry, we have no children's ministry after this. So it's a great time to go home. No. I mean, if you want to bring your kids in here for Q&A, you're welcome to, but they probably won't want to be here. So, but we're going to take the 15 minutes, go potty, do whatever you have to do. There are, and Aaron will show you some books and some DVDs, Adam Zertal's books and the DVDs. Great stuff where he gets a chance to really showcase his fleet of drones. But then we're going to come back. I'm sure you've got some questions. There may have been some things you didn't understand, you want to know more about, or you may say, what's that about the footprint, or, you know, these kinds of things. There are a lot of things to talk about. And also, if you are leaving, even if you're staying, know that we're going to come back tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, and do this again, new topic. So come on back for that. You're holding some things here. You want to advertise?
So we have 3 books of Professor Adam Zertal. The first one is A Nation Born, that describes the discovery of Joshua's altar. This is a popular book. This is not an archaeological, boring, detailed academic book. So it's really great to read. This is The Footsteps of God. This is just a recent publication about the footprint structures that I. So if you don't have patience to wait for me to come again, then you can read all about it from the words of Adam Zertal. And another excavation that he did, which discovered the city of Sisera, the Canaanite general that fought against Deborah and Barak. I also have a series of Bible teachings with amazing drone footage. Yeah. So the first one is about the site of Jacob's dream of the ladder at Bethel. The second one is the footsteps of God, finding Gilgal. The third one is about Shiloh. By the way, Dr. Scott Stripling is still excavating in Shiloh as we speak, and there is a major find.
Yeah, we've got to talk about
that's
that.
going to be discovered.
Yeah.
It's going to be announced, right?
Yes.
And but I can't tell you more about that because I'll have to kill you. And then these Israelis, they kill everyone. And this is the last DVD, Joshua's Altar, the Divine Choice, about what I spoke about, but with great teachings that I give, along with a Christian colleague that we discuss the sites. So I invite you to purchase them. You can purchase the whole Lipkin package for $100. But if you want to buy the individuals, just speak to my son, Evie, and he'll be happy to...
We'll make you a deal.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. See you guys. Come back. 15 minutes.
1 second. Perry is part of Scott Stripling's crew, and he's in every dig for the past 30 years?
No, not that
20?
long. No, not that
15?
long. Only at Shiloh. I started at Shiloh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he's been excavating with Scott in Shiloh, and he's like one of the main guys, and everywhere they go and tour, he's the shofar guy. And so we start out this Q&A session with the sound of the holy shofar to show the whole world that God exists, and that the Bible is true.
Can I just say something?
Sure.
You have to excuse me because I'm fighting back tears. I stood on that altar and sounded this shofar.
Wow.
I'm privileged and I'm blessed.
Come on.
Both at the same time, I'm very humbled. And to be here tonight with you all, because I'm a local. I grew up went to Souderton High School. My family's been in the area since 1739.
You live around here still?
Yes.
Oh.
Sure. Gerhardt is my last name. So
Okay.
It's a common name. So, anyway.
So Perry, go ahead.
Go ahead. There's four basic Hebrew words for the different blows that I will blow. One is an awakening call. One is a call for help. One is a summoning, I believe, of the angelic host. And the last one is unto the name that has now been discovered in the land.
Amen.
Hallelujah. And that's
Hallelujah.
what I flow to. The last one, I take a deep breath and I everything I can. It's unto our Heavenly Father, and we know His name now. So it's there, right? It's in print. So can we rise?
Let's
In
stand.
honor. I gotta go pick up my wife at work, but we'll be back here tomorrow.
His wife is needs prayers.
Yeah,
so.
pray for my wife. She
Yes.
has a surgery on July 7th. What's her name? Emmeline.
Emmeline?
Emmeline, yes. Yeah.
Let's
That's
pray.
why we're not on the dig right now. So.
Father, we lift up our hearts, Lord, to you. We thank you for this evening. We thank you, Lord. It's always great to see Aaron again. Lord, we thank you for the friendship we have with him. We thank you for what you've taught us tonight and what you're about to do. But Lord, we also thank you for this surprise visit from Perry. And Lord, we're reminded of so many of these things that as Christians sometimes we just overlook, Lord. But We especially want to lift up Emmeline to you right now. Whatever this surgery is next week, and whatever all the matters are, it doesn't matter that we know. We know that you know every single thing. Lord, you're the one who knit her together in her mother's womb, that she's fearfully and wonderfully made, and that you are at work in every fiber, every molecule of her being. And so, Lord, we ask for your healing, for your touch, Lord, and for your presence and direction over Emmeline, over the surgery, over Emmeline and Perry. Lord, you hold their lives in your hand and the direction for their life together in your hand. We commit them to you. In the name of Yeshua, Mashiach, we love you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Blessings, brother.
See you tomorrow night. See you tomorrow night.
Can I do another tefillah in Hebrew?
Come on, you know what to do.
רפאנו אדוני ונרפא, הושיענו ונבשע, כי תהילתנו אתה, והעלה רפואה שלמה לכל מכותינו, לאמלין. אל נא רפא נא לה, אל נא רפא נא לה.
תודה רבה. Love you, brother. See you tomorrow night.
Light it off. Have a seat.
Yeah, light it off.
Okay, so you've been here before, you probably know the rules. So if you have a question, I'm just going to ask you to raise your hand. I'll see who you are, give the question. Everybody doesn't always speak loudly, so I'll repeat the question so that everybody else hears, and also so that it's being live streamed. And then Aaron will take it from there, the expert, the humble expert.
No, please don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Please continue, he says. Okay. Questions. John, I saw one from you.
Hi, Aaron. Is there anything suspected on Mount Gerizim that archaeologists might be interested in seeing if there's any remnants there of anything?
Okay.
And is it some place that your archaeologists can access?
So the question is there anything suspected or interesting that they may be interested in finding that may have similar value on Mount Gerizim?
So again, I'm not an archaeologist, so I can only give you my theory. And there are two issues. One, where is Mount Gerizim?
Right.
Okay, there are different speculations. I personally follow the Samaritan tradition, which sees Mount Gerizim as the adjacent mountain to Mount Eval on the other side of the valley where Shechem, Nablus, is. So that could be the mountain. Adam Zertal believed that the mountain of blessing, Mount Gerizim, is actually east of Mount Eval, and a mountain called Mount Kabir. So the first question we need to ask and an answer we need to get is, where is Mount Gerizim? And even if I'm right, I usually am, but but my wife says that all the time, by the way. If I'm right and that is Mount Gerizim, the other problem we have is that Mount Gerizim has been the center of worship of the Samaritans. And so it was so populated, and for 400 years, it was their center of operations. So it would be harder to find something there. Mount Eval nobody was there. It's a remote place. It's barren. And so it was easy to find the altar and whatever.
Interesting point. It was a surprise to me, and I think most people would be surprised. When we think of Samaritans, we think, back, in the first century, the Samaritans, from after the Assyrian invasion and all that, and the growth of the Samaritan people. But how many are estimated Samaritans to be in Israel today?
700, 800.
Yeah. So there's still Samaritans there and practicing. So
right.
It's an interesting, Israel's got a lot happening. So.
Yeah.
Other questions? Joe, that's right, I saw you. I'll get to you, Mark.
So with these great discoveries being made at the altar, my question is the country doing anything to preserve this great national treasure, not just a national treasure, but a worldly treasure? Is there anything being done to preserve this so future generations could appreciate it, and you know, more discovery could be made. That's being done by the
Yeah.
country.
So the question is there anything that Israel is doing to preserve these kinds of discoveries, not only for Israel's sake, but for the world? You know.
No. That's the short answer. The long answer is, if you found a site like this in the United States, you would immediately erect a full-blown museum and with air conditioning and a store and a Starbucks and everything. In Israel, sites like these, that are thousands of years old, are all over the place. That's issue number one. Issue number two, when Zertal found it, the academic world did everything that they could to delegitimize his discovery. And like I said, they said it's a Canaanite barbecue stand, it's a watchtower, it's an ancient Canaanite village. They had these. Today, most archaeologists agree that that is a cultic site, that is a place of worship of the Israelite civilization. But because of that delegitimization. It's complicated.
Why so many syllables?
In the 1980s and 1990s, the Israeli government never really treated it as a holy place or a place of heritage. And I'll give you an example. 3 years ago, a Muslim building constructor that was building a nearby street or road came with his tractor and bulldozed the compound wall to use the stones for rubble for this. So there was an outcry. You had 12 archaeologists, including minimalist archaeologists, that protested against this action. The Minister of Defense of Israel, Benny Gantz, said, "It's just a terrace. It's just a wall of a terrace. It's not, And we were like, what? What's going on here? So the Israeli government is trying to do whatever it can to avoid doing anything with that place. We are trying to change that, and the discovery of the lead, I have to say, is part of my zealousy for that site. And I hope that when the final report on the lead tablet is going to be published in 2 months from now, and it's going to become a fact in the academic world, then Israel won't have a choice but to take care of it. Also, keep in mind that the political situation in Israel is not stagnant. I mean, I'm going to move from archaeology to news. The Palestinian Authority is collapsing. Abu Mazen is barely functioning, if not on his way to going back to where he came from, and I'm telling you, every day I'm looking at the news from, I would say, sources that are not the mainline sources. You see the clashes between the extreme Muslim Hamas and Islamic terror, Islamic Jihad, and the people of the Fatah, the movement of Abu Mazen. And there's some places where Abu Mazen and the Palestinian Authority are not even going in because they know that that's the end of them. So the moment that happens, the moment Abu Mazen dies or the Palestinian Authority ceases to have any control over the area, Israel is going to come in. The Oslo agreements are going to basically be canceled, and then Israel is going to take hold of this site again, unwillingly, by the way. And then guess what? This might be our chance to continue the research. And there is still much to research in that site. There are areas that are not excavated. And if we found one tablet, if this was an important place of worship, we might find more writing in that area.
Sure.
I'll give you another thing that I didn't say. I said that we didn't have money for the final report, and the final report hasn't been written yet. So the good news is that a few months ago, a philanthropist gave the Manasseh Hill Country survey team $500,000 to complete the final report. And as we speak, they are writing the final report. And I think that that's amazing. I mean, I've been trying for the past 10 years to get donations from, the churches that I go to help out with that, help out with that. So I'm happy to be here and to say I don't need anything. I don't need any donations. And just before coming here, Dr. Scheibar asked me to take a hammer and to take a sample of stone from.
We were together.
You were there.
Yeah.
To take a sample of the stone from the bedrock to give to the expert that's working on the plaster pieces.
What happened?
To see if it's from the same. No results yet. To see if the plaster is made from the local stone. So it's really ongoing, and the amazing thing is that we have 2 final reports that are connected to Joshua's altar, one Scott Stripling and one Manasseh Hill Country survey, that are going to be published in the next few months, after this site was dormant for 40 years. So I'm a happy camper.
Will we be able to see that? I'm sorry, will the public be able to view that?
Yeah, I don't know if we understand anything, but it's not those books that I held. It's like this academic
Yeah.
mumbo jumbo.
Mark, you had a question.
Yeah, because of where the site's located now, was your extraction team at any political or legal risk?
So
And what
yeah.
kind of chain of custody is maintained in these digs?
Say again.
What kind of chain of custody? I mean, what documentation? How do people know that you're where it came from?
So the question has to do with, well, I missed the first part because I was thinking about the second part.
Was the extraction team at any risk politically?
Oh, was there any risk for the extraction team when they took the soil samples from the dump? And what's the chain of custody plan for all this?
So to answer the first question, there was no danger or no risk at all. I go there all the time by myself to fly my drones, but also to take tourists that want to visit the altar. So Pastor John was with me, and did you feel any risk or any?
No.
It's a remote. He's afraid to say yes because I asked him. No, it's really.
I
there's
was
no-
with you and you
yeah,
were carrying, so we were fine.
But they're saying there's no risk because it's like this remote site. I mean, listen, if I would go into a place that is in the middle of an Arab village, it would be a totally different story. But Joshua's altar is on the slopes of the mountain, located remotely from any Arab village, close by to an IDF army base on the top of the mountain. We're good. But we couldn't operate there freely. We had to speak to the Israeli army prior to the extraction. We had to get their consent, and we had to be escorted by the army when we went there, and so we were good. We did start early in the morning at 4 or 5 in the morning when the sun hasn't even risen yet, to complete as much as we can before our cousins wake up. And they wake up early, so we know when the hour 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock came, the army comes and says. So we did 3 times. That's it. So there's still more material there, and look, I'm trying to find a way to continue the extraction. We'll see. To answer your second question, because the army doesn't have. Okay, so everything that goes on in Judea and Samaria is under the Israeli army's responsibility and control. So, for example, if you go to Megiddo in Israel, or to any ancient site, archaeological site, in the recognized borders of the state of Israel, the responsible organization is the Antiquities Authorities. When you come into Judea and Samaria, which is the areas that were liberated by Israel in 1967, the Archaeological Authority is in the army. It's a department in the army. There's an officer that is responsible for the archaeology of Judea and Samaria. So they don't even have Mount Eival in their computers, because the area where the altar is under Palestinian Authority responsibility. However, we find a way to somehow enter the lead tablet into the computers of the Israeli army. So right now it's cataloged in the archaeological department of the Officer of Archaeology. And after the final report is out, it's going to the Israel Museum. I mean, it's the most important archaeological discovery that was ever made in the land of Israel. And I was part of it.
Jill.
I have a question. When you were talking about the ring, like the base of the altar, and I think that, you think about all the people coming in, even Abraham stops. I think the first place he stops is Shechem and sets up an altar. Is that suggested in any way that that could possibly go even farther back in that area to Abraham?
So the question has to do with considering the location of Mount Ebal, which is right near Shechem, not that far from Bethel. I'm not sure how far it is. What half-hour drive, 20 minutes?
Depends on the traffic.
So, considering, this is the way of the patriarchs. When you're in Judea and Samaria, central Israel, that's the way of the patriarchs. So Abraham would have come through this direction. Is there any possibility that that circle that was in the center of Joshua's altar may even go back further than that?
So the only altar that the Bible says that Abraham built in that area is Elon Moreh, the oaks of Moreh, or the terebinth of Moreh, and that's in Genesis 12. It doesn't say that and we know the area of Elon Moreh. And by the way, one of the discoveries that Zertal did might even make it even more specific. So I don't think that the circular installation that was at the center of the altar is Abrahamic. Now, if you ask Scott Stripling, the archaeologist that found the lead tablet, what is that circular altar? He will say that is Joshua's altar. Now, if you ask Zertal what that circular installation is, he will say that is the founding altar. Okay? They don't contradict each other. What Adam Zertal and Scott Stripling agree is that the larger altar was built later to venerate what's the location. Zertal writes that the bigger altar was used for 60, 70 years. And I think that this is the great thing about archaeology. I mean, we don't need evidence to believe in God, right? Okay, we believe in God, period. But when evidence comes up, oh, that's great. I mean, it makes us excited. But I think that as a Bible believer, I gain more from the findings, because they don't just show that it actually happened. They actually shed more light on what the Bible is writing, because the Bible, I know I'm going to say something here that you might think contradicts everything I said an hour ago, but the Bible is not a book of history. The Bible is a book of faith. It's a book of morals. It's a book of providence, of prophecy. But the Bible mentions real historical events. So when you read a book of history, let's imagine that there was a book of history about Joshua's altar, then they will have the whole chronological use of that site, dating from this year to this year. They might even go into more explanation about what was going on around the area, the geography. The Bible doesn't do that. The Bible just describes the implementation of the ceremony by Joshua, and that's it. The archaeology is telling us that the site was in use for 70 years. So, can we find anything in the Bible that talks about it? So, I met Zvi Konigsberg, that religious guy that ran away and brought the book. So we were sitting at a Chinese restaurant, because that's what Jews eat. And he says, Aaron, listen, the altar of Joshua became a temple. It became the central place of worship for the Israelites. You need to tell that to the Christians you're talking to in churches. Have a book about it. And I told them, listen, you don't know these Christians. They know every word in the Bible. And it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible that that became a temple or that that became a place of central place of worship. So he looks at me. Open the Bible. So I opened the Bible, and he says, open Joshua 8. And I said, well, I know Joshua 8. It's the ceremony. Joshua implements the ceremony. What? It says, now open chapter 9. So I open chapter 9, and there's a story about a Canaanite nation called the Gibeonites who are cheating Joshua to think that they are a nation that came from far away. And Joshua signs a covenant with them, and suddenly he finds out that they cheated him.
Right.
So he can't kill them because there's a covenant. So he is punishing them to be what? To be slaves, to be the water bearers and the wood cutters. Where?
Right there.
At the altar of Adonai. This is a chapter right after chapter 8.
Interesting.
This is the only altar that's been spoken about in the vicinity of that chapter. And so Tzvi Konigsberg believes that there was a ceremony. Joshua built an altar. The ceremony ended after 1 or 2 or 3 days. And then the Israelites saw this place as a holy place because this is where Moses told them to go to. So they venerate it. They make it a temple, a place of where they centralize the sacrificial activity of their theology of the Bible. And then, after 70 years, they cover it with stone to decommission it respectfully. And then suddenly Shiloh starts working chronologically. So this is what the archaeology is telling us, that the Bible is hinting or kind of mentioning.
Wow. Next question.
Any, like, Christian Broadcasting Network, you know, because they give tours and they explain things, are they very interested and are they contacting you at all for information on archaeological digs?
Yeah, the question has to do with places like CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network. Are they contacting Aaron about this? And
so first of all, I have to say that unlike the Israeli and Jewish TV channels, which are mostly controlled by the left, I have to say that the Christian channels are doing an amazing job covering the sites, the biblical sites in Judea and Samaria. Eric Stockelbeck actually came to the altar and made a full show or program on it, and so, you know, they're doing a great job. Because they haven't contacted me, and I kind of understand it because I'm not an archaeologist. I mean, you know, Scott and also Professor Gershon Galil and Peter van der Ven, who analyzed the text inside the tablet. It's in their hands now. But I have a small part. I'm being humble.
you
now.
have a very big
Thank you,
part.
thank you. I have a small part in this. Okay, it's a very big part. Okay, very big, huge.
Almost
even.
as big as your head.
But I think that at a certain point, it's already in the hands of the experts, and I'm good with that. I mean, I don't care about my respect or my honor. What I care about is for this finding to totally destroy the false academic teachings that were taught.
And Ray, I'll get you in a minute, but I just want to say something. Aaron, during his presentation, was talking about the academic view as he experienced it in high school and, you know, university. That, you know, this view that is an archaeological view, but it's an overall academic view in the religious community, for that matter. I'm not saying necessarily your community. I'm saying the academic community in Israel. that there was no Moses. And that sounds so hard for you to believe, right? How can you have the Bible and say that? But that's not uncommon. That is, I mean, I went to a seminary that didn't believe that. No. The seminary I went to, or where Dave went, we went to the same place, totally believed in the Bible as we read it. But the vast majority of seminaries, for decades now, and especially today, the vast majority of Christian seminaries have adopted what is known as the documentary hypothesis, which is, I'm not going to bore you with it, but basically that the Bible was not written by the people it says it was written by, that the first 5 books were not given to some character named Moses, but rather that the Bible was cobbled together from basically 4 different sources, the Old Testament, cobbled together by these 4 different sources, and the whole idea of Deuteronomy was invented during the time of King Josiah, as I forget what they call it, a religious polemic. In other words, to get the people out of idolatry and focused. So they invented the names of people like Moses and David. So it began with there is no Moses, then it became there is no David. That is a very common teaching in probably 90% of the seminaries in America today, and has been that way for decades. Therefore, think of the pulpits in America, okay? So that's very common stuff.
I do want to go into the documentary hypothesis for a second, because there are chapters where the name of God is Elohim, or El, and there are chapters where God is referred to as the Lord, YHWH. And so,
which brings up the good question.
Right. So
how did that happen?
So the documentary hypothesis is saying chapters that have Elohim are ascribed that we will call him E, and chapters that have the name of the Lord are J.
As in yeah. There's no J in Hebrew.
And so you have a J and you have an E, and then you have other sources as well, because the idea is that there could not have been a document so early on in the time of Joshua and Moses that actually had both names on them. Suddenly, Aaron Lipkin finds a tablet that has both names on the same document.
Right.
You understand that totally...
You get what he's saying?
This is a nuclear bomb.
It has the divine name, Jehovah, or Hashem, as he would say, Jehovah, and also El.
Right.
God, Elohim. So, but the example of that he's referring to, and you can see it for yourself. Genesis chapter 1, over and over and over, all you read is Elohim, Elohim, God, Elohim, Elohim. Chapter 2, it's Jehovah Elohim.
Right.
So the question became in the 1700s, I forget the Frenchman who asked the question.
Oh, no, not Bellhausen.
What?
No, forget it.
Okay. Who said, why is this? And then he posited a possible solution, which wasn't all that bad. It was later on, and I always find this interesting, during the time of Darwin, and also we have this guy Wellhausen who comes up with what Aaron was just talking about, the documentary hypothesis. Anyhow, we don't want to bore you with all that stuff.
I changed the world.
It's hard to walk around with a pumpkin on your shoulders like that, Man, what a gourd. All right,
the
Ray,
burden.
You had a question. It's such a burden. Ray. That's it?
Flavius Josephus, how instrumental was he in finding a lot of these sites to dig it? Because I heard from looking at his writings, they found a lot of sites by looking at his history.
So the question was, how instrumental was Josephus in identifying, I guess, some of these sites?
Because I've heard that they found sites within a couple meters where they were digging, where he said things were digging.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
I'm not that deep into archaeology, and also Josephus, he does describe ancient times in the history of the Israelites, but the time he's operating is the time of the destruction of the temple, and so that's 1,300 years later.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Joshua's altar, I'm pretty sure that during the time of King David and King Solomon, the Israelites already forgot about it. I mean, it becomes a remote site on a slope that nobody really visits anymore, and we don't find any remains from later periods in that site. So it was deserted and forgotten. And also Josephus. I went. We're talking about the educational system and what they're teaching there. So I did a tour guide course in Israel. And they had a whole section of how we cannot count on Josephus, and how all his stories are made up. I mean, it's like, you understand, there's like a theme that you have to be skeptic and just deny anything that's ancient because you can't trust it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mike, stand up so I can hear you.
All right, so the first question I have is, at the altar, that's the last time all the Israelites were together as a nation?
Say this again.
Was the last time they were all together as a nation?
Yes.
That altar?
Uh, the question was, at the altar, was that was the last time they were all together at the altar? Yes.
The Bible doesn't have any similar description to that, of having everyone there, including the children and the women. You have to understand, this is not 2022.
Right.
Everybody's equal. The children and the women were not part of the important ceremonies. It was the judges, it was the elders, the zkanim in Hebrew, which literally means those who have beards. So, but then what's a woman? I mean, what is a woman? But
be careful here.
But anyway, so I think that the other most important event that we have immediately in the vicinity of this event is Joshua convening in the temple of Adonai in Shechem just before passing away and saying, as for me, in my house, we will worship the Lord. So that's another important event, but the Bible doesn't say everybody was there. So,
right. Yeah. Second question.
Is there anything else that you're looking for? Any other?
Is there anything else that you're looking for? Is
the
that
Ark
what
of the Covenant, definitely. After seeing Indiana Jones, I mean, we have to find it.
It's in my garage.
You want to hear what my dream is? My dream is that Dr. Shaibal is going to call me one day and say, Aaron, we analyzed the plaster from the altar, and there's writing on it, and this is going to be the most ancient copy of the Bible, because the lead tablet doesn't quote verses from the Bible. It's just a curse inscription. The earliest quotation of the Bible we have is from a much later period, the year 600 BCE. The silver scroll with the Aaronic blessing on it from Jerusalem. So if we get a text from the Bible dating to the year 1300 to 1400 BCE,
Yeah.
wow.
Jen had a question.
I have two questions too. The footprint, if I understood it correctly, they have found other ones?
The
Yes,
footprint, first question.
So-
I feel like we're in press conference here. The first question has to do with the footprint. They apparently have found others, was the question.
That's the question. And the answer is Zertal describes finding 6 footprint structures altogether, 3 in the Jordan Valley, in the area that is very close to the Jabbok Pass. Okay, you've heard of the Jabbok Pass? That's where Jacob wrestles with the angel. And that's where his name changes from Jacob to Israel. So that area has the largest concentrations of Israelite settlements that I showed you on the map. and it also has the largest concentrations of footprint structures, 3 of them. Now, I have a theory why that area became so holy in the eyes of the Israelites, and the theory is clearly because of Jacob. You understand? The Israelites are there. Okay, so I'm going into the next topic of the footprint structure. No, that's actually not in the DVD. I kind of, these are insights that I'm getting as I delve into the findings. But if we have to go into the heads of the Israelites. When they cross into the land of Israel and settle, Jerusalem is not in their head yet. Shiloh isn't in their head. What's in their head, what their stories, their theology is what happened until that time, which is the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Exodus, the wandering in the desert, the miracles that happened there. That's what they are commemorating. So when they're sitting on the slopes adjacent to the footprint structure, watching the ceremonies happening in there, they're looking to the direction of the Jabbok Pass, because that's the place where their forefather crossed the Jordan, and when he became from a personal man called Jacob to a nation called Israel. So they're venerating that event by sitting in those footprint structures and looking to that direction. Those are the 3 in the Jordan Valley. There's another one in the Tirzah Valley, the ancient way that leads from the Jordan Valley and the Jabbok Pass to the city of Shechem. Another one at Mount Eval, and another one that was found in 2013. There's possibly a 7th one, but I told you too much, so you'll have to come again.
You had a second question?
Yeah, I actually have another one now, but, so the footprints, right? So the part where the altar is, what happened in the other space? Was that where the Israelites just stood, and were all the footprints the same size?
So we're theorizing. Adams are. Oh, you want to repeat that? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, I'm following on. Yeah. So the question was, so in these footprints you have an altar, but what was happening in the rest of the area? Are the Israelites just congregating and watching?
So again, you're forcing me to talk about this topic, and it's a full lecture. So I'll just say briefly that it's believed that the only people permitted inside the compound were the Levites and the priesthood. The fact that we have footprint structures that are have inner division follows the tabernacle logic that you have a holy and a holy of holies, and that outside of that is where the regular Israelites are permitted to approach, and the outer wall of the footprint structure is that border that makes that area suddenly holy. And but the interesting thing is to look at the footprint structure and to see what it's made of and what the architecture is, and if that could give us any idea of what the Israelites did there. And there is a lot to learn, but not now.
But also,
but
it was interesting when we went to Argaman. Argaman was a great example. But also, when we were at Shiloh, there's something similar, and that is that there's elevations around it, hills around it, where people would theoretically then would be able to sit and observe. Think outer court type of idea. Okay, if you follow what Aaron was just saying about the Holy of Holies, the holy place, and then the outer court. And at Shiloh, that was the same thing. And Shiloh is an amazing area to see where where the fence, so to speak, would have been, and where the tabernacle would have been, and then in the mountains around it, facing. So if you came and you brought a fellowship offering, and now you came and you ate that food, on the mountain are all these bones of kosher animals. In other words, you had a picnic with your family, and you left the bones there.
Not just the bones, also the vessels. The vessels were also broken because they were holy because of the sacrifice. So again, you find a lot of pottery sherds on the on the slopes.
What do you got? 3 questions? You think you're Peter Ducey or something?
Numbers, right? In Numbers, when Balak wants Balaam to curse Israel, he told him to sacrifice for him, which I thought was very, like, is there anything, like, it wouldn't be that big then? Like, why, like, I never, like, do you understand when he asked them to sacrifice to hear God if he should curse or bless Israel? So it would seem like they made an altar
They made a.
to sacrifice.
You mean for Balaam?
Yeah.
Okay, but he's not an Israelite.
Okay, so right, so but it was up on these mountains, like he went to different mountains.
Right.
Right.
And he asked, so you understand what I'm asking? Yeah.
Well, and for those who didn't hear, what Jen's asking is, considering, if I might have missed some of the things you said, but when Balak asked Balaam to curse the Israelites, and then Balaam offered a sacrifice, trying to find similarities here. And that's when I said, yeah, but he's not an Israelite, right? So I'm not sure where you would go with that. I would just, if anything, it's coincidental. Ancient peoples all did sacrifices, so. Which is very interesting, by the way, for anybody who's an atheist. When you study ancient cultures, everybody sacrifices. If you said you were an atheist back in ancient times, they probably would have killed you because everybody knew there was a God. Now, they might have believed in the God of the valley and the God of the mountain. People had strange ideas. But everybody sacrificed. The whole idea of blood sacrifice comes twisted by Satan, but out of the garden, after sin. Anyhow.
By the way,
it's your night, not mine.
When remember the story when Hannah comes to the tent, and she starts crying and praying to God to give her a child, and then the high priest comes to her and what does he call her?
A drunk.
A drunk.
Yeah.
Why? Because you don't pray to God at the tabernacle. You bring a sacrifice. Okay, so Hannah was a pioneer. Her prayer was the model of the first prayer at the tabernacle, the place of sacrifice. So, also, I want to say, and again, I don't know if I think that what you're saying is not a question. It's basically saying, how does the sacrificing of Balaam equals to the sacrificial activity of the Israelites and their altars, the structure, yeah. So first of all, we didn't find the altars of Balaam, so I don't know how they look and what exactly he built. And again, he was a pagan. He was a prophet, but he was a pagan. But I can tell you is that, and again, I'm not an archaeologist. I'm just walking and looking and observing and theorizing. But what do we have, for example, what do we have at Argaman, the footprint of Argaman? We have, this is an ancient Israelite worshiping site from the time of Joshua. And we have a circular bama or altar there. When we look at the altar of Joshua on Har Eival, on Mount Eival, we see a circular installation at the center that Scott Stripling believes is Joshua's altar. So I think that round altars are temporary altars. In other words, we build them for a certain thing, but when a place becomes a temple, when it becomes a permanent place, that's when you build the ramp and the whole thing. So I think it sounds logical.
Yeah. Okay. Jill, you're double dipping. Huh?
You went to the altar in 2019.
Without John.
Yes, without me.
Yeah.
By the way, I have to stop you 1 second. I have to stop you. I went with Renee and with Jill and with John.
JW,
yeah. And we went to the altar and it was great and then Pastor John wanted to go too, so so I say, listen, I can't promise anything. I mean, we're going up there. We might be stopped, and they might tell us to go back. So let's go. And so we go up, and part of the ministry is to help army bases. And so I called the army a day before, and I said, listen, we want to go into the army base, and maybe the ministry will be able to build, a gym for the soldiers or something. So we're going up the mountain. And we're getting closer to the army base. Now, usually what I do is I go up to the army base and then immediately take a right, go around it, and go down to the altar. This time, we're going up to the army base, and as we get closer, suddenly the base appears, and you have this whole platoon on the road.
Oh, yeah.
And they're looking, and they're seeing a civilian vehicle coming up there, and they're like, they're getting ready.
Some American in a Hawaiian
they're
shirt.
Stopping us. And they're stopping us, and the commander is coming. He says, this is the Israeli way of saying, open your window. What are you doing here? So I'm saying, we're supposed to go into the army base. We are a ministry, and we're helping soldiers. He says, really? I said yes, and I actually spoke to the army the day before. So I called the guy, and he's talking to the commander. They're shouting at each other, and then he's giving me the phone, and the guy said, "Oh, you're putting me in so much trouble now." And then they said, "Okay, so you can go into the base, but after you finish, you have to go back." So Pastor John didn't get to see the altar. We just went into the base. We saw it, and remember that,
and I made empty promises to the guy that we might be able to help you in some way someday. Yeah.
So yeah, but then you came with everyone, and it was amazing. Sorry, Jill, question.
We talked about in 2019, you were hoping to find additional scarabs or jewelry because there's always been a discrepancy in the dating
Right.
of, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's a yes, we can talk about it offline, 'cause I'm sure it's a long conversation, but did you ever find any of that yet? Because I think there's still stuff to be...
So the question is that in 2019, when Renee and Jill and John were able, not this John, were able to go up to the altar with Aaron, Aaron's hope was also to find additional evidences, scarabs or jewelry, that sort of thing. Scarabs are an interesting or an important piece. And so the question was, did you find anything, and what was the outcome of that?
So, 1 second, let me just... so we have the Bible deniers, the minimalists, who are called the minimalists. So the minimalists...
We have a long tradition in Israel of putting the S longer. Like, for example, when you talk about leftists, in Israel it's smolanim. So we like to put the S. So it's a long tradition.
So we have the minimalists, they're dead, okay? And we have the maximalist camp that believes in the historicity or some of the historicity of the Bible. And you have two camps. The two camps are basically fighting with each other on the date of the Exodus. Okay, that's one of the major questions. And Adam Zertal follows the late Exodus date, the year 1250 or 1300, according to the mentioning of Ramses in the book of Exodus. And Scott Stripling, evangelical archaeologists, and also rabbinical and traditional Jews believe in the earlier date of the Exodus, 1450. And so
like we do.
So you have 200 years between one Exodus and the second Exodus. And we might say, who cares, right? It happened. But if you're an archaeologist and you're looking for archaeological evidence, you need to look at the right layer. You need to look, at the right place. And if you don't know when supposedly it happened, you won't find evidence. So dating the altar is a crucial component in getting that disagreement settled. So one of the things that Scott Stripling wants to do is to go to the earliest layer of that altar, and that is the circular altar, and to try and date that installation to get a better idea of when it was built, and then understand what happened with the Exodus. I will add that the scarab that was found just behind us, these two scarabs, which, by the way, are lost. We don't know where they are anymore. But this is what happens when you have 40 years of waiting until the final report is ready. Things get lost. So these scarabs were dated at the time that they were found to the reign of Ramses II. So Adam Zertal was like, I'm right. And then an Egyptologist in Israel, her name is Daphna Bento, she's one of the experts on Egypt in Israel today, reanalyzed these scarabs and got to the conclusion that they belong to the reign of Thutmose III. And that's why I changed it from Ramses II to what she's saying, which kind of puts us at the early date. So I'm sure there are more scarabs there, for sure. We just need to continue with the wet sifting of the dump and excavate, because there's more to excavate there. Scarabs are these Egyptian luck charms that always date to a certain period, or so it helps us date the earliest time that the site was in use.
And they're basically replicas of dung beetles, right?
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, you see the stone dice right here? So you're wondering, what did the Israelites do? Were they gambling 3,300 years ago? So Scott Stripling believes that this is one of either the way that the Israelites would do lots, or on the Day of Atonement we have two goats, one the scapegoat, and so you'd have to do some sort of a ceremony to know which of those. So that's one option. The second option, I think, is even more exciting, and that is that what you're seeing here is what's referred to in the Bible as the Urim and Thummim. Okay, the way the priesthood would communicate with God. Okay, we have the prophets that God speaks to, and we have the priesthood that has an alternative channel to speak to God through the Urim and Thummim. So this might be it. And Professor Gershom Galil, who just analyzed the lead tablet, believes that he can actually decipher those stone dices as well. Yes. Now, I don't know. I mean, maybe he's too enthusiastic, but what Adam Zertal did say is that some of these sketches here might be the altar itself, or the sketch of the altar, possibly. But we don't know what it is. I mean.
Okay, we're going to take one short, two short or one long. So.
One short.
Okay, I got Charles.
I may have missed it, but why a footprint? I can probably guess, but why a footprint?
Guys, why a footprint?
Why a footprint?
Why a shape of a footprint? So again, this is a full lecture, and Adam Zertal has a couple of reasons in his book, Footsteps of God, that he thinks that. I'll just say I'll give them two actually. One of them is when we find a foot in archaeology, we have to go to the Bible and look for feet to see where they're mentioned. One of the repeating verses in the book of Joshua is, "Wherever you will tread your foot will be yours." So the major theme of the book of Joshua is the conquest, and that is the flag. That is the Iwo Jima of the Israelites. There are other theoretical reasons for that, but that's in my next lecture. I do want to say that I did get an insight. I was sitting at Argaman, that footprint that we were sitting in, and Adam Zertal, immediately as an archaeologist goes to Egypt and Babylon and Assyria. So he thinks that the reason why they're building these footprint structures is because of Egyptian influence. That's in my lecture. But I was sitting there and I'm saying to myself, I'm not saying it's wrong, but maybe there's more to it. Suddenly I think to myself, they're sitting here on these slopes of this mountain and they're looking at the Jabbok Pass, remembering and commemorating who? Jacob. Why is Jacob called Jacob?
No, that's Israel.
That's it. Yeah, that's Israel.
Jacob.
Why is Jacob
Yaakov.
called Jacob?
How was he? And when he was born, what was he doing?
No, he'll catch her. He said the right thing. He gave the right answer.
We're the people of the foot, okay? Just an insight.
Cool.
Are there active forces that would destroy all this?
Are there active forces that would destroy all this?
Natural or human? In the last 2 years of COVID, hundreds of archaeological sites were vandalized and robbed by the Palestinians. And not because they had an agenda, just because they want to make money, and you can sell the coins and the arrowheads that you find for a lot of money. The answer is yes. I mean, the altar, everything is in danger, especially in Judea and Samaria, because there are whole regions in Judea and Samaria that are under archaeological Palestinian control and are therefore deserted by the Israeli government. Israeli inspectors, archaeological inspectors, cannot go inside and arrest anyone because it's not under our control. So I'll just give you another example. There is a very important archaeological site, a Hasmonean fort, and what the Palestinians did was to first
explain the Hasmoneans.
The Hasmoneans are the Maccabee family from Hanukkah that ruled over the land of Israel during the Hellenistic period, around the year 1300 and on. So there's a huge fort that wasn't fully excavated at all. And the first thing they do is they come, they dig, they pour cement, and they put a huge Palestinian flag. That's how it begun. And then the next thing is to build the jihadist mosque. That's how they call it, which is like this 5-story mosque. I won't say on top of the fort, but adjacent to it, destroying part of the structure. They don't care about the archaeology.
How about the atheist academicians?
What about them?
Would they be out to cancel all this?
The question is whether the atheist academics might be a force against this. I don't know whether they would be as much, but they would rather just ignore it.
They won't be able to physically hurt the site. That the Palestinians are doing that very well. What they can do is try to delegitimize any finding that proves the veracity of the Bible, and it's getting harder and harder for them to do that because we'll finish with that. In the past few years, the findings that are coming out of excavations all over Israel are aligning themselves with the biblical narrative, and that's I think that's spectacular. I know. 1 second, but so what's happening is that the atheist archaeologists their power is diminishing. They're kind of disappearing, and I hope that this tablet will make the final blow, the knockout, and they'll be out. There'll be buses of professors going to kindergartens, and books will be used for other things. Did you ask if the atheist archaeologists can help in protecting the sites?
No.
That's not what he said.
Go against it.
To go against
I
it.
thought you were for it.
No.
Whether they might be forces to destroy.
No. So let them die down, let them die out, and yeah.
But not even going to the Temple Mount, which they're like destroying everything there.
We have a couple of problems. The problem is that one of the other things that's disputed by the minimalist school is the United Kingdom of Israel. The reigns of King David and King Solomon, according to the academic world, are shrunk to a small kingdom in Jerusalem that was led by these primitive kings called David and Solomon. There was no United Kingdom.
Which is why the Queen of Sheba came 1,500 miles.
Exactly.
David never ruled over all of Israel, and
Right.
and so now they're finding these cities that were built during the time of King David. This is carbon dating. I mean, you can't. And these are fortified cities. This is not a Bedouin king building a tent on Jerusalem. This is something else. So suddenly, the minimalists are starting to, oh, well, it's Canaanite. They're trying to. But one of the problems we have in proving the United Kingdom is that we don't know where Jerusalem is. What? We don't know where Jerusalem is. We know that Jerusalem existed in the time of Abraham. We knew that Jerusalem existed when the Israelites just started conquering the land from letters that were written from the king of Jerusalem to Pharaoh in Egypt. This is all external sources. It's not the Bible. We know that Jerusalem existed. There was a Jerusalem in place at the late Bronze and Middle Bronze Age. However, in excavations in the city of David, the general area where Jerusalem is supposed to be, we didn't find remains from those periods. So it's like proving that the United States existed 10,000 years in the future without being able to excavate Washington, D.C. and seeing if there are any federal documents that attest to a United States. You understand? We need to excavate there. The Temple Mount, we can't excavate. We don't know where Jerusalem is exactly on that hill of the city of David.
Could it be somewhere else?
It definitely is. I mean, Shai Bar, the doctor that heads the Manasseh Hill Country survey team, pointed exactly to where he thinks Jerusalem is. The problem is that you have an Arab village on top of it. We can't excavate.
Right. Okay, just because of the enthusiasm in the back row, one bonus round question. Jen, stand up, I can't really hear.
I'm just curious, as far as the artifacts, do you know the percentage that are from the Old Testament versus the New Testament?
Well, the more you go forward in time, the more evidence you have. Also, don't forget that the Israelites at the time of Joshua were semi-nomadic. I mean, they just came from the desert. They were all sheep herders. The villages that they build goes according to the semi-nomadic tradition, which means to build a circle of stone for the sheep pens and to build the tents around them. So this is what you find in the Jordan Valley, and then 100 years later, you actually find villages that are arranged in a circle where they would keep the sheep and the goats, and the outer wall of that circle is made out of houses. And then the next step is the 4-room house, which all Israelites had. This is the way the Israelites were living in. This is the type of architecture. So why did I tell you that?
Artifacts that were from early period versus...
So artifacts it goes to 3,000 years back, so it's hard to find evidence, and the culture is semi-nomadic. It doesn't leave much, real evidence behind it. The more you go forward, the more structures you have, the more coins you have, the more it's easier to find more evidence.
You can buy them dinner and ask them all the questions you want.
I guess I don't know. It's not the period that I know. I mean, I'm kind of like Adam Zertal, Joshua, Judges, and that's it.
So here's the deal. Tomorrow night, we're going to do this again on another topic. So wise one. Humble and wise. Any teasers? What do you think you might talk about? The entry into the land, or Gilgal, or
This is for people who are really interested in the next step of the understanding of the Bible. This is Bible 2.0, and so you will. The question is, when the Israelites are in Egypt, were there Israelites also in Canaan?
oh, you're going to do that? No, that's cool.
Okay.
That's very interesting. You mean, by that, do you mean, are you talking about, for example, the half-tribe Manasseh and that sort of thing? Like, why would they want that land?
That's more than a teaser.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
It is an interesting question. Have you ever asked yourself that? So, well, come tomorrow night and find out. So anyhow, tomorrow night we're gonna start at 7:00. Young adults kind of owns the night, so Josh is going to lead us off in worship, and we'll run through, and then Aaron will be on, and we'll have a time of presentation, and then if he can still stand, we'll have some Q&A after that. Okay?
Are you going to have different books tomorrow?
Well, you want different books? Can you write something else tomorrow night?
Yeah. By the way,
same stuff.
My wife told me yesterday, Aaron, you have to write a book, and he says, Aaron, Dad, you have to do a movie about the tablet. So I have more work to do now. So
Thank you for coming.
thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Later.